Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is Church360 Unite, the first session in our 4-session training series. Today's topic is setting up your website. My name is Peter Frank. I am the Senior Manager of Marketing Technology here at Concordia Publishing House with a focus on Concordia Technology Solutions. My email address is on the screen. You're welcome to reach out to me at any time. Normally I put my phone number up there, but with this sheltering in place going on with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm not always here in the office. Lately, while I've been doing the webinars, I have been because it's a much better environment for me to present, but I'm not guaranteed to be here. So reach out to me over email. If I need to call you, I'll be happy to do that. Just put your phone number in there too. And sometimes I'll defer that to our software support team. There's a whole team of people supporting Church360 Unite, and they are often far better equipped to handle your questions than I am. So you may have me forward your email to them from time to time as well. But a few things before we get too far. I want to tell you why I am so passionate about this webinar, or this series in particular. This is the first church website that I helped build back in 1999. This is my home church, St. Matthew Lutheran Church in Barrington, Illinois. They've come a long way since this website. I've come a long way since this website. But this was what really sparked my passion in digital communications, especially within the focus of ministry. So you can see there, it's a pretty basic site. We even used a line drawing for our graphics because graphics back then were kind of elementary, if you will. I was able to create those buttons on the right-hand side, which was a lot of work with, I think it was Paint Shop Pro. That was the one of the many tools that were out there before Photoshop became the primary tool that's available. I think Photoshop might have been around, but it was far too expensive for me to purchase. So that's really been a fun thing for me to look back on and see how much has changed since then. Now, a lot has not. The basic principles are still the same because they're the basic principles on communication. Focusing on your audience, making it easy to find information, keeping it as visually appealing as possible. All of those things are still the same. How we go about doing it, we definitely have more tools in our toolbox, and that's what I'm here to show you today. Now, a little bit about us. Concordia Technology Solutions is the church administration division of Concordia Publishing House, and we've been developing software since 1984. So that image that I just showed you was from 1999. CTS had been around for 15 years at that point, developing software using things like MS-DOS for applications. Now, that's longer than I've been alive. I was born in '85. And so when I made that first website, I was just a teenager. But we've been producing software here at CTS for a lot longer than that. So I hope you can have some confidence knowing that we've got a lot of experience working with churches, and we take that and we've passed it on from team to team as people have come and gone, but we've continued to build on this knowledge to produce what we have today, which is Church360, among many other software solutions. Now, we are part of the publishing house, and even though CTS has been making software for 36 years, the publishing house has been around for over 150 years. We are the publishing arm of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and we've been serving that church body faithfully for 151 years now, or almost 151 years. We had our celebration last September, and you can see here, there's our team in front of our building, or a portion of our team. I had to crop it to fit in the space. We've got a couple hundred people who are working in various capacities to support your church and sharing the gospel message. Today, we're talking about Church360 Unite, and I'll cover this in a little bit more detail, but just to make sure you're in the right place, Church360 Unite is a church website builder that gives you the tools you need and the flexibility you want to build the website you've always envisioned. Or maybe you haven't envisioned it and you're hoping to get that vision with the training today. Well, we've got a lot to cover, and I'll show you a number of different ways to have a fantastic design and to really tailor it for your church. That's the focus from today, but we'll dig into more details the rest of the week. So, oops, I forgot to change that. It is not 6 sessions. It is only 4 sessions. I am reusing my Church360 members webinar. So let me go ahead and we'll change that while I'm talking. There we go, 4 sessions. As much as I'd love to present for 6 sessions, I'm getting pretty tired with all of these couple hour long webinars. So we're gonna do 4 sessions. The first one is today, setting up your website. The next one is adding content to your site. Oh, I just saw that somebody didn't have sound, but I think it's all fixed. So good, Gene, you should be in good shape. So adding content to your site is going to be tomorrow. Now, we're not going to fill out the whole site because that'll take longer than the 90 minutes we've got planned, but I'm going to show you the different tools for that. We're going to get others involved on Wednesday, the 3rd session. Church360 Unite is a unique platform in that it's meant to invite all of the members of your site. It is your church website, but it can also be kind of the back end of your church community or your digital end of the church community. It used to be a common phrase to use the word intranet with an RA in there. That's not as common today. I wouldn't call this necessarily a social network because that has other implications, but it's really the members only side of your website where people can log in and participate. So we'll go into that in quite a bit of detail on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we've got a whole variety of things to talk about, really taking your website to the next level. Now, all 3 sessions before that will have some advanced techniques in there, but the 4th session really gets into these extra things that are not a requirement by any means with your website, but can take it to that next level. All right, a few housekeeping items before we begin. I'm planning 75 minutes for presentation. I am notorious for going over that, so bear with me. If you have to jump off at a certain time, don't worry about that. I'll mention in a moment about the recording. So 75 minutes is my plan for presentation, 15 minutes for questions, but I'm going to go until you have your questions answered. So we've got 90 minutes total today, but I'm always willing to go more if that's what's required. Now, we are recording this. This is our most popular question. Can I get a copy of the recording? Yes, absolutely. By the fact that you registered for the course, not even the fact that you're here, but just the fact that you registered, I'll send you a link with the recording after each session. Now, that'll be tomorrow. We've been having some issues getting things uploaded into our resource center, and it's been about a 24-hour delay, sometimes less than that. So check your email tomorrow for the link to today's recording. Now, if you're watching the recording, you don't need to know any of that because you already got the link, but that's the plan. Now, attendees are all muted. We've got a large group here. We're not quite in triple digits, but we're pretty close. And so I can't have everybody unmuted and asking questions. We'll never get through it if we have the questions verbalized every time something comes up. But that doesn't mean I don't want your questions. So please ask questions throughout by putting them into the chat. I've got that pulled up on my screen over here. From time to time, you'll see me look over to my right. I won't always answer the questions when you ask them. We've got that time at the end for that specific purpose. But if I'm on that topic and I see the question right then, I may try to answer it as I go. I do always make a few assumptions about my audience before I begin. It's necessary so that I can prepare the right material. I know that these assumptions won't apply to all of you, but it's important for you to know what I was assuming going into this. So I'm assuming you're a brand new user of Church360 Unite. We're going to cover some really basic stuff. If you've been using Unite for a while, you're going to know these things, and that's okay. Stick around for the things that you don't know. I will be getting into those advanced topics. I'm also assuming you have full access to all features, that role of administrator. I have to assume this because we're covering so many different topics throughout this course. Now, I know you don't all have administrator. Hopefully most of you do. But if you see something on here that you don't have access to, that's probably why. There's really no other restrictions besides roles. Even within our different plans that are based on features, it's really about the depth of that specific feature rather than how many different features you have. So for example, with our different plans, you might have a different number of administrators, but you'll all have an administrator. You might have a different amount of storage space, but you'll all have some storage space. So if you aren't seeing what I'm seeing or what you're seeing on the screen, that's probably because of your role, not because of what plan you're paying for. And finally, and this is an assumption, but it's more to clarify what you're seeing. I'm assuming you have Church360 Unite connected with a church management software, and that specifically is Church360 members or shepherd staff. There are a few features that come with having that connection. Very few that are unique to that connection. Most of what you'll see you can get through just entry. If you don't have your church management software connected, that's fine. But we're going to be looking specifically at households. And there's not a concept of households in Unite, but there is a concept of households and members and shepherd staff. And Unite can borrow that for display purposes. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that as I show this, I will be connected to a database of users, which includes households. So keep that in mind as we go. Well, now is your chance to tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm not going to ask this every day because in our previous webinars, we had some issues getting those answers in, and I don't want to frustrate you on a daily basis. I'll just frustrate you today if you can't answer the questions. If you can't, it's no big deal. This is just to help me know who's here. So let me put the first one out. This question is to give me an idea of the type of role that you have. So please select the role that most closely describes your primary role at church. If you have multiple roles, which one do you spend more time on? If you spend the same amount of time, which one do you put more thought and energy into? Go ahead and just let me know. It's going to help me present today. It's not going to change anything for you other than how I present the topics. So I'll give this another minute or less. It tells me what percentage of people here have voted or selected a choice. Wow, it looks like we've got a good percentage in that other. So I'd be curious what your role is. If you selected other, go ahead and put in the chat and just tell me your specific role or your title or what you do. Nothing real lengthy. It'll just be to satisfy my curiosity, that's all. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'll show you what we have just so that you can see. Looks like we're at 14% are pastors. Our number one is administrator at 32%. Then we've got 19% at tech coordinator, 5% at other called worker, and 30% at other in general. And so as I look into our chat, now some people can't answer the question. I do apologize for that. Otherwise, we do have people who are, on the board of evangelism chair, a volunteer, our vicar Brian here. Hello, Brian. Brian's at my church. I'm glad you're here. We've got a few others, volunteers, director of the day school. So we've got a wide mix today. All right, let me go ahead and hide that. The next thing I want to ask you is to just know if you are currently using Church360 Unite in your congregation. Again, this will help me understand how to present. And so I've got 3 options there: yes, no, or no, but planning to soon. All right, looks like we've got a number of people in each of the different ones. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and looks like Jim has joined us. Jim is from our software support team. I'm going to take a second to make sure that Jim can answer your questions. So while you guys are answering this, I'm going to move you over to, there we go. All right, Jim, hopefully you now have the same access I do, although you can go ahead and mute yourself unless you want to present as well, but that's not the plan for today. All right, thanks for taking that sidebar with me. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. I'll go ahead and share this just so you can see where we're at too. This is not a sales webinar by any means. This is all about training you how to use the software, and you'll see that about 2/3 of you are already using it. So for those of you who aren't using it, you're welcome to use this as a decision maker for your church, but this is not the purpose of the webinar today. The purpose of the webinar today is to train you how to use Church360 Unite. All right, well, we're going to continue diving in. So our training goal for today is that by the end of this session, you will know how to set up your Church360 Unite account and establish a theme and style guide for your church. And I'm going to say that you'll know how to do that. I'm not going to say you're going to be an expert at either one of these things. Setting up your account's not too hard. Creating a theme and a style guide that works for your church is going to take some tweaking and probably some collaboration, but at least you'll know how to do it. So we're going to look at settings first, basic stuff, nothing too heavy here. We're going to get into themes. We've got 12 different options. I'm not going to show you all 12 because we'll be here all day. I'm going to show you how to customize the theme, and we'll give a couple examples of what you might be able to do there. We're going to get into styles and how that applies. That'll take us into a little bit of the content side of things. We're not going to spend time learning the tools as much as learning how styles affect the tools. You'll see what I mean when we get there. And finally, I've got a few advanced techniques to show you. There's some times where the tools that we present aren't enough to satisfy what you need to do. And sometimes there's very logical reasons for that. Sometimes it's very technical reasons, which again are logical but not as apparent. So we'll look at a few of those before we close today. If you are not currently using Church360 Unite, even if you're not considering buying it for your congregation at this point, but you want to follow along, go to 360unite.com. I'm going to switch my screen over to that real quickly so that you can see where we're going. You can go and start your free trial. Now, we also have recently launched a very scaled back free version of Church360 Unite. And I believe if you go to our website and type in at the very end free-plan, it'll take you to a different sign up page. Get started with a free plan where you can go ahead and have it basically forever. You can fill out additional information. Now, you're going to miss a lot of the tools that I'll be showing during this training webinar. It's essentially just pages. You can still set up your theme in that. It's not going to be the full thing. So if you can't afford Church360 Unite and you want to just try this out, or maybe you're already a subscriber and you want to do something and just have like a playground for testing different content, go for it. We want to make it easy to get up and running with a church website, so that's why we introduced that. But all of the really cool features are in the paid plan. So I want to make sure that our current customers know that you are getting a lot more than this free plan currently has. All right, well, what I did is I went through and I started a free trial of all of Church360. I used that during my members training last week, which we'll talk about in a second. And I'm going to go ahead and start that trial on screen with you. So go ahead and fill out the form. You'll catch back up in a minute. But while you do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Church360 so you know where we're talking in terms of context. So Church360 is our complete church management software solution, which includes Church360 Unite. But it also includes Church360 members, which is your member management, your attendance, your offerings. All of your contact information is really managed in there. And there's connections between members and Unite. Now, separately, we have Church360 Ledger. And while there's connections with members and Ledger, there's not really any need to connect Unite and Ledger. So we won't really talk about that at all. But I wanted you to know where it fits within the context of everything. Now, Church360 Unite, we call it our church website builder. Now, that's at its core, that's what it does. But it's quite a bit more than that. Church360 Unite is, of course, your website, but it's also your church's blog. Your member hub is another way to refer to it as an intranet. File sharing, if you're paying for something like Box or OneDrive, things like that, it could serve that purpose for you. It's your master church calendar. Many of our churches use Google Calendars, and that's a great tool. You can actually integrate that with Unite, or you could use Church360 and Unite specifically as your master church calendar. And it also allows you to do mass emails. This isn't quite the same as a MailChimp where you can do stylized designs, but those tools cost money as well. And so if you're looking for something that's kind of an all-in-one package, Church360 Unite has that. If you already have Unite and you didn't know about emailing, well, stick around. I'll show that to you on Wednesday. There's a lot of cool things that are kind of tucked away. A new feature that we'll be releasing quite soon, text messaging. That'll be included in the plan. Stay tuned on details for that too. So Church360 Unite takes all of these different tools, puts them in one place, and allows you to use them as you need them. All right, what are the goals of Church360 Unite? You're going to hear me refer back to these a number of times. Build a website with no knowledge of HTML. Now, we're going to talk about some HTML today. I'm going to get into that in our advanced techniques, but you don't have to use it. Again, that's advanced. That's taking it to the next level. The foundation of websites is a coding language called HTML. And if that means nothing to you, if it's just letters on the screen, that's fine. You don't have to know that to build a website. We built Unite specifically for those who don't. We also want to make it as easy to update your website as it is to send an email. You'll see a lot of the tools kind of feel familiar. Emailing is something that everybody does on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis. We want to make your website as easy as that. We also want to get past the idea that your website is just an online bulletin board, a place where you can post messages, take them down. I don't have a church bulletin board picture, but this one kind of serves the basis that's in the background. It's things that you put up and you take down and you put up and take down. Your website can be much more than that. We want to make sure that the right content is shared with the right audience, meaning what your potential visitors see is going to be different than what your members see because they're at very different places. They need to know different information. So you'll see that contextualization of information throughout this. And finally, we want to give access where and how you need it. So that's why we have the different roles. You don't need to give entire access to your whole church staff or even your volunteers. You just need to give them what they need. So we'll talk about the roles, but we'll also talk about the devices. You want your website to be accessible and look great on a mobile device. That's so key today. So that's what we keep in mind, that it has to be that access where and how you need it. So let's go ahead and log into the software. But before we log in, let's set up our account. So you'll see here, this is an email that I set up, and it's just my basic training site. You'll be able to follow along on anything that I post publicly by going to training.360unite.com, different than 360unite.com/training. But I haven't set it up yet, so you won't see anything there. So I got this email. It said, set up your site now. When I clicked on it, it took me then to this website here. And I just went ahead and typed in my password so that you didn't have to see it. And now I'm going to click continue. And if it goes wrong, then I have a backup because it's been sitting on my screen for a little while. All right, the first thing it says is this you? That's, again, because I'm connected to my church management software. You don't want to create duplicate accounts. And so it's going to try to figure out if it's you or not. So it did find me. I said, yep, that's me. If you're just starting from scratch, you aren't going to see that. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and close, not save my password there. The first thing that's asked me is my email address and my phone number and church address, which it already has because of Church360 members. You'll probably have to enter this for your church. I'll click continue. And the next thing is sitemaps. Now, tomorrow is all about content. Tomorrow, we're going to look at navigation. But if you want to get started early, if you want kind of a base template that you can then change, you can take one of these. We put these together as a starting point, not as an ending point, meaning take this and run with it for however it works for you. And you can take a look at the types of pages. Each page will have some helper text to get started. Or you can just go to blank slate and not worry about it all, create it from scratch. Well, because this is a training webinar, I don't want to do everything from scratch. I want to kind of get started. So I'm going to click this visitor focused one and then click continue. So it's going to go ahead and create those pages for me. Now I got to add my content. It's not stuff that I want to have publicly available because it's not about my church yet, but it's a starting point for me. And that could be a starting point for you as well. The next thing is that we go in, and let me close my extensions. We get to see a preview of some different themes. Now, if you don't like what's here, that's fine. You can always change it. You don't have to make this decision right now, but it's a good way for you to kind of decide where you want it to start. Now it's loading a lot, so you'll see some kind of jumping when you go from theme to theme. But we've got 12 different themes. They all have unique names. And we'll see, take a look in a few minutes with some different presets. Presets are predefined styles for your site. So even if you don't like these 12, but you like the structure of one over another, you can take that structure and come up with something new. That one's not too bad. There's some of these that are a little bit harder than others to use. The one that I'm going to focus on today is called Light. So it's this one right here. I'm going to click Finish, and it's going to load my site. So this is all just part of the initial setup process. You'll only ever do that once, but it's an important step to get you started. You can change anything we just set up after you're in there, but we don't want it to be just a black and white template. We want you to get going with it, have something that you can be proud of right away. And that's what I show right here. Now, I'll encourage you, if you have trouble seeing your screen, you'll notice like here, I've got a lot of blank space on the side. I can use my browser zoom to get a little bit closer, and that's by clicking Control and the plus button. This will help you see it during the presentation today, but it also helps you at home if you want to see your screen better. Control and plus, that's not a feature of the software. That's a feature of our Google Chrome browser. It's something that I like to highlight so that I can zoom in and show you things. Now, occasionally when I zoom in too far and it'll change the UI, the user interface. So that's something to keep in mind. If something looks a little bit off, I'll mention that that's part of the zoom. But let's talk real quickly about the overall layout. Up at the top here, you have a black bar that sits on top of your actual church website. You also have over here a little tab on the left-hand side that says Edit Page, and a little circle with an I button on the lower right-hand corner. This is your information center. These things are only visible to the person who's managing your site, who's logged in. Now, let me show you another thing that you can do that I use all the time with my browser. My URL up here, my website address, it says https://training.360unite.com. That's my website address. If I go and I click, this is using Google Chrome, but if I go and say Control-Shift-N on my keyboard, it's going to create what's called an incognito mode for my browser. What this means is it basically removes anything that I have saved in my browser and pretends like this is the first time I've ever gone to the internet. So I'm not logged in, it doesn't show me anything that I've done previously, my history isn't tracked. It's a really good test environment. And you can have this open the same time you have your admin site open and test some of these changes from a public viewpoint. You're not going to be able, as soon as you log in here, well, now you've got a history. But this is what it looks like currently in the public setting. So I can go and click around in my navigation. If you went to this website, this is exactly what you would see, which is different. And I'll minimize this, go back here in my admin. It's different than this. You'll notice I have far more in my navigation. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But at least right now you can see my site. Now this bar up at the top is for admins, people who have access to manage the site, as well as this edit page. The information button will be there for everybody who can log in and use these admin tools. The information center right down here, when you click on it, it allows you to search for articles in our help center. There's a button here that lets you send a message to our support team, ask questions. It also gives you the phone number. So this is kind of your lifeline. If you need help, go down here. This is going to be the best way for you to get answers. If you can't find it in the help center, ask our team. You'll communicate with a real live human being, just like Jim, who's on the line with us answering questions in the chat. On the edit page button over here on the left, this tab, we're going to get into this a little bit today, but a lot tomorrow. So I'll just let you know that it's here. When it's appropriate time later on, we'll go back here. I'll explain the details tomorrow. But where we're going to start is up here in the settings, the far right. Now we put it on the far right because you're not going to use this too often. When you click on settings, you'll get an overlaid screen. It goes on top of everything else. You're not in a new window or anything like that. It's just has overlaid all of it. If you want to get out of this, and it's true for any one of these other tabs, if you'd like to leave this, there's a little X button next to that tab. It's an overlay. Think of putting it on top of that and then kind of swiping it off. If you click the X, it'll close. That's actually kind of confusing for people. We've looked at doing it in other ways. We used to have it not go the full width, and so it's easier to just click off of it, but that limited our space. So once you know it's there, it's pretty easy to remember where to go to close it. And so we've taken the stance of just telling people, even though it's not the most noticeable thing in the world. So just look for that little X if you're going over the top. Well, settings is where we're starting today. Let's work our way down these screens. Some of these I'm going to defer to our advanced session. But the first thing you'll see here is that I have a usage section. Usage tells me how much of my storage space I've used. Now, depending on your plan, you're going to have different levels. I'm on the premium plan, so I have an unlimited amount. I can upload to my heart's content. Now, I won't necessarily want to do that because it might slow down my site if I put all that information on a page. You know, there's things you have to be aware of. But if you're just uploading it and using proper management of putting it out there for your users, well, you can have unlimited space. Or if you're on one of our other plans, it'll decrease. But I think the minimum is 500 megabytes, which is a good amount of information for a website. The next thing we have here is our church information. Now, you may not be a church. You might be a school or a nonprofit organization. We've built this for churches, but the tools are available for others. So you'll see church used quite a bit, and that's my example today. But if you're not a church and you're some other organization, that's fine too. Really, it's just to identify what goes in your footer, what goes in your email notifications. It's kind of your basis for communicating with people. And so this way you're not having to type it in over and over again. This is the stuff that we filled in at the beginning, or it was auto-filled from previously for me. And we also have a time zone. Now, when you see these things, it's going to be the same things that are down here in your footer. You see that? If you want to change these items in your footer, you're going to have to go up to settings and change it there. You can't edit those on the page. Those are part of your template. That's pretty straightforward, right? If you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat. Typically, I don't get too many questions about this, but I'd be curious if you have one. Next, we're going to click on calendars. This was the account view that we were on. Now we're going to calendars, the second on the list. And we've got a lot of calendars. If you were with for our Church 360 members training, these calendars will look awful familiar to you because these are things that we created last week or that we talked about in Church 360 members. If you are brand new with Unite, if you're just starting off, or if you don't use it with church management software, you won't necessarily have all of these. We're going to get into calendars quite a bit more on Wednesday when we're talking about getting others involved. So I'm not going to talk about this too much today, but I do want to highlight that if you are using Google Calendars, you can include those events in here. They show up as read-only on your calendar, but at least you don't have to move all your events over. Or if you're going to transition to using this, but you're not ready to set up all the events yet, that's fine too. You can show them for right now and convert your events to Unite. So we'll talk about that in more detail later on. Next, we have your domain. Your domain is what takes you from something like training.360unite.com to 360unite.com. Well, you can't use that, we're already using it, but something like mychurch.org. You could define a very unique domain name or website address, but the website address is a bit too broad. You'll see here, this is something like www.mychurch.com rather than training.360unite.com. Now, this does cost money. Our advanced plans and our premium plan include that, but you don't have to buy it through us. We offer it, if you're on one of our standard plans that doesn't include a domain, we offer it for $30 a year. You can get it cheaper elsewhere, but then you have to manage it and you have to remember to pay the bill. When you buy it through us, you have to remember to pay us, but we send you that invoice, but we take care of the technical side. And if there's an issue, we dig into it. So there's some advantages. Of course, like I said, you can look elsewhere and get it. It's not a money maker for us by any means. It's a service we provide for those of you who just really don't want to get into that side of things. Again, it's an advanced feature and it's a standard feature from a website perspective, but managing that domain, you have to go and put in this information on your domain side. Some people want to shy away from that, and that's just fine. Similarly, Google Analytics. This is a free tool provided by Google. This allows you to understand your the behavior of your visitors, where they're coming from before they get to your website, what they do once they get on your website. We'll cover this briefly on Thursday as well, so we don't have to get into that today. Next, another thing for Thursday, we have syncing with Shepherd staff. Now, goes back to what I talked about before with your church management software. I'm using Church360 members, which automatically syncs. I don't have to do anything to set it up in Unite. But Shepherd staff is our PC-based church management software. It's been around since 1994. We've got thousands of churches who use it. You can integrate Shepherd staff with Church360 Unite. So you can feed your member information in, they can update their contact details, send it back into Shepherd staff. Because Shepherd staff is not always online, it's a manual sync, meaning you hit a button in Shepherd staff and it pulls the data in. We'll cover this on Thursday as well, but this is where you go to set that up if you're a Shepherd staff user. Next, we have social links. This is a relatively new feature, but we had so many requests to put social media links in your footer that we said, all right, well, let's go ahead and make that pretty standard. So this is our first area of action today. Now that we've set up our site, let's go ahead and customize it a little bit. We put 5 primary social media accounts on here, the ones that we had asked for the most. And the links, it allows you to paste the links to those sites. So we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Vimeo. You might say, well, I don't have a Twitter account. Okay, don't put anything in there. If you don't put anything in there, nothing will show up. And if you don't want to use this at all, that's fine too. It's optional, but it's really easy to do. So let's go ahead and we'll post social media links for CTS. Oops. Posting it from a bulleted list. So I'm going to get some additional characters. Bear with me as I delete it. I didn't want to type all this out. Also, I apologize if my keyboard is too loud. I have a separate mic. It's not connected to my laptop or anything like that, but it's all on the same table and it's pretty close to my keyboard. So if you hear me typing, don't worry about that. Oops, I put that in the wrong place. We don't actually have a Vimeo account, so I'm going to leave that blank, but these are our different social media links. I'm going to go ahead here and click Save Changes. And then I'll close out of, it'll refresh actually for me. Now, if you look down in the lower right-hand corner, you have the links there. And when you click on a link, it'll open up a new tab and take you there. Now, I want to caution you, and this is purely strategic, not software related. We put all of the social media links in the footer because it's a good strategy to not send people away from your website once you have them there. But it is something where people might go to find your social media, after they've become connected with your church. So we put it down there. But I would caution you, once you get people to your website, don't send them away right away. Make sure you have the right content on your site so they stay there. But it is a tool that's available to you, and that's how you use it. All right, now let's dig into themes. And there's a lot we can get into. Remember, when we, first off, I'll say I clicked up here on the Themes tab right next to Settings, to the left of Settings. When I get here, the first place I go to is under Themes is Browse. There are 12 different themes. They all have different names. And within each theme, there are multiple presets, meaning example styles that you could use with your site if you wanted to. So I am on light and I'm zoomed in quite a bit, so you'll probably see some additional bars on the right-hand side. That's just because I'm zoomed in. But I'm on the light theme and I selected this default preset. But if I want to select any of these other ones, I can. Now, the images are pretty small. You may not be able to see anything. Let me show you a cool trick. This one down here looks kind of interesting, but I'm kind of curious. Are those bubbles? Are those lights? What is that in the background? If I click on it and then click and hold, it'll load a preview for me so I can get a zoomed in view. Now the information that is on the center within that white border, that is just an example. You won't get that. But the information that's on the outside, that color, that green color up there, that is part of the theme. Let's go to another theme, material here. If I click on orange, I love orange. If I click on the orange one, I can see exactly what it looks like. Now you'll notice the same contents in there. Again, that's not coming across. It's everything outside of that. We just put it in there so you can get an example. Or maybe Wonderful Cross. There are a number of different images in there and they're kind of hard to see. But if you click and hold, you can get a preview and choose if you want to use it. You say, well, I like that one. Let's go with that. Well, then all you have to do is click on it and apply down here in the lower right-hand corner. Click Apply Theme. And it'll say your theme has been changed. Well, that was easy, but I don't see any changes. Well, that's where you close this menu. Click this X button at the top. And when you go back to it, your site has already changed. Now the things that are in your navigation are there. Your church information down here is still right where you left it. Your social media links are still there. All you did is change the appearance, not the content of your site. Now I'll tell you, you can do this as many times as you want. There are no fees associated with changing themes. It's all included. You have those 12 theme options. They are all mobile responsive, and I'll show you that in a little while, meaning you can access it on your phone. It'll look good. There will be different menus. So go ahead and especially at the beginning, play around with it. See which one makes sense for your church. Here's another orange one. Again, I like the orange. It doesn't necessarily go for all churches, but some churches have an orange theme, and so that might work well. Let's go one more. Let's see. For the longest time, modern was our most popular. And we, like this one here, this was probably our most common one that people chose. We've added more since then. I like this one. I like the colors. Again, you can probably guess why. So let's see what that looks like. There you go. You'll notice that each one has kind of a different layout for the menu. Like here, the social media links are centered at the bottom. There's so many different ways you can do it. For our training example, I'm going to stick with light, and I'm going to go with this one right here. There's dark blue background, kind of goldish text. We're going to go ahead and click Apply. Now I just changed my theme, I don't know how many times, 4 or 5 times in a matter of minutes. It's really simple. You can do the same as well. I'll caution you though, when you change your theme, everyone will see it. So let's go back to our incognito mode. Now this is still the old one. And you know what, I just realized well, for one, I accidentally clicked a button that opened up something. I'm gonna close some of my windows here. Pardon me just a second. It's getting filled up rather quickly. All right, there we go. Now this is the old theme we're on. I've changed it 5 or 6 times since then, but I never refreshed. So if I hit the refresh button up here in the top left, reload this page, when I'm done with it, when it reloads, it's gonna be right back to that one that I just chose. Now everything else has remained the same, the content, the navigation, but that's one thing I want to caution you about. You can't just play around with it and expect no one to notice anything. So that's why you might want to set up a different free trial or start our free plan as a playground. That's okay. You can even call it that, Christ Community Church Playground. And that way we know about it. You may get a contact from a software consultant saying, hey, are you using this? But that's okay, go for it. All right. So we're back here. I'm gonna go back up to themes. I like this theme, but it needs some changes. That's where we have the customize. If you go to the left-hand side to your navigation, go to the third down, it says customize. Customize gives you a preview of your site and provides some options for you to change it. So for example, I might want to change the background. I like this color scheme, but I don't like the honeycomb as much. So I'm gonna go ahead and click the clear button, clear my background. It's just a solid color now. In this case, it's black. I could stick with a solid color. If I click on the color, I've got a number of different options. And let me go ahead and copy a code. You'll see here you have color selectors. So you have the red, green, and blue, or the hex code. Those are the most common ones. We have the HSB, hue, saturation, and something else I don't remember. That's all right. You can also just go and drag and drop here and pick your color. You don't have to know the code. So change, I want it to be more in the blues and put it there. But I know which code I want. And right now I'm gonna just, I'm gonna type it in there. I forgot I have the bullets so they come across when I copy paste. So that's kind of a darker green. We'll probably use that in other places, but that's not what I want for my background. In fact, I have a background chosen. An image, it's from a stock site, I paid for it. I'm gonna click on Browse, and we're gonna go and find it. So this is our asset selector. This says anything I've uploaded to the site, specifically here in this area, but I can look at other pages too. I have nothing yet. We just started this. You haven't seen me upload anything. So I am going to go ahead and click Upload. And on my desktop, I have an image called background. Pretty straightforward. I will upload that just like uploading an email, a file to an email. It goes in here, it shows me that. I'll click it, and I'll click Save Changes. And now that's been applied. If I click Save Changes, it'll refresh my site and load that image. Now the background color, that green, will load behind it. So if it's a slow connection, like right now I'm presenting live, so my connection's a little bit slower, it'll load that first as just the standard color because it doesn't take anything to load a color. And then it'll upload the image. So be careful of your image size. You know, if it's too large, it'll take longer to upload, and we're talking seconds or milliseconds, but it still all makes a difference. All right, that's not too bad. Well, I think I'm gonna go with Christ Community Church for right now. So I'm gonna go into settings, and we're just gonna remove the school side of things. So I'll remove that, click save. And we'll go back to it. Now you see it's only on one line. Now again, this is all fictional. Anything I show you with this church doesn't actually exist, but it'll drop it down to one line. Now I might want a logo on here. I've designed a logo, I've worked hard on it, I wanna show that. Well, that goes here under banner, and it defaults to being the same name as up here. If we just click clear, and then I go and browse, I can upload an image. Just like before, I'm gonna go to logo color. Click on it, click Save Changes. There it shows up. Well, let's go ahead and click Save here. All right, there you go. I have it cropped pretty close. Typically, logos have the spacing around the outside. I probably should have done that. Well, we're gonna fix this later during the advanced settings. Typically, you would put your logo in there with that advanced spacing, which is why it all collapses on there. But I'm gonna show you some tricks later on how to make it look better than this. So we're gonna stick with this for right now. We'll come back to it. Let's go back to themes. Actually, before I do that, let's go to my incognito mode. We'll switch back here. This is the old one. I can hit the reload button, or I can also on my keyboard hit Control F5. This is something that is good to do on a regular basis just to see where you're at with your site. I like having the different environments so I can double check things, because you'll know you'll see as we get into editing the page, it's going to be a little bit harder to see what is live versus what is your view once you dig into some of these details. You can always see it, but it might take you a few clicks. So I like having this open. All right, we're back into our site. We're going to go back to customize. This theme has a few options here for accent colors and link colors, heading colors, all of that. You won't always necessarily see the preview because some of it is on other pages. But if you have a theme, you might as well go ahead and start putting some of these colors in. You can always change it. Most churches who have a style guide have their primary colors selected. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a few of these that I've set aside for my church. And if we need to change them later on, we can. But again, it's very standard for me. I know what these are. You probably know what those are as well. Now, the one thing that's here, this link color, you'll notice that I do show some links in here. If I wanted to put a link color in here that I'm familiar with, oops, sorry, I did put in the link, that was the heading colors. My mistake, I read that wrong. The link colors will come into the text. That white still stays there regardless. The heading is if I remove my banner. If I click clear, there we go. You'll see that's where it comes in. In fact, we could even leave that there now, although I'm going to go with my orange color because I like that better. There we go. So we could leave that there if we wanted to. Some of these other things are baked into the theme, and there's ways to override that we'll talk about under advanced settings. But that doesn't look too bad. When I get into advanced, we'll come back to the logo, but I think that looks better right now than the logo. So that's how you go about changing your look and feel. Let's go ahead and go back into our incognito mode. Back when I had the logo there, we'll refresh. Logo's gone. Now that it's text, it's centered. Let me show you something. If you drag your window, make it smaller, and you collapse the side down, you'll notice that all of a sudden we get a new kind of menu. It's this what's called a hamburger menu. And in fact, let me go ahead and minimize this so you can see it better. Yeah, we'll just put it right over here to the left, to the right. You'll notice that this has collapsed. Everything down here has centered. The menu, when I click on it, gives me a search and gives me a drop down for my different categories. This is the mobile side of the site, and most of the sites look like this. There's some variation, but it's a pretty standard mobile menu. So if you're interested in seeing what it looks like on the phone, that's all you have to do. And when you expand it, it goes back to your mobile view. That's what's called a responsive site. It responds to the device. So if you have something that's more like a tablet, it might look like this. Or if it's a tablet and it's in portrait mode, it might look more like that. So you've got a few different options to test it. That's why I like having this site up, because if you go back to the one that you're editing, once you are in edit mode, we don't allow you to edit your site on a mobile device, and it starts breaking. You'll see that it goes to white up there. So it's kind of confusing. That's why I like having that signed out view. Okay, we've got our theme in place. Let's start talking about content. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about styles. And this has a lot of impact into how your site looks later on, which is why we're talking about it today. But we're going to kind of dip our toes in the water of editing the content of your site. So we'll cover this again tomorrow. I'm going to go rather quickly. You'll probably have questions that I'm not going to answer today. Today is about the appearance of the site, but I have to put some content in to show it. So the first thing I'm going to do over here is click Edit Page. This takes me into edit mode, and what it does is it changes my experience of the site. It's probably kind of faint, but you'll notice on the right-hand side, I've got some lines here, dashed lines that are gray until I hover over it. Now it's blue. I've got some pluses here. I've got some icons over here on the right-hand side. We'll go into all of that tomorrow. What I want to identify first is that you can now go into this cell, as we call it, click this pencil icon, which is edit, and now I can go and edit the contents of my site. You see where it says home? I can erase that. I can put something else. In fact, I'm going to put a lot more in here, and it's not going to make any sense because it's Lorem Ipsum. I'm going to drag this in here. I've got a Word document set up to help me modify my site. Now, if you want to follow along, this is in your handouts, this exact Word document. It's a bunch of nonsense, but it's going to help us look at styles. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. You can download it, copy it too. I like using this and keeping this on my site because it gives me a way to test the appearance of things. So I'm going to copy this, hitting Control-C. When I go in here, I'm going to right-click and paste as plain text. I don't want any styles from Word coming across. I just want the nonsense in there, which sounds really silly. But you'll notice that I've got headings listed, and in some places I have different line breaks. So you'll see here, the first one is heading 1, then I've got a paragraph, heading 2, then some different things. I'm going to test out the appearance of what each of these looks like. In this edit mode, you get an editor that looks very similar to an email. One of the things that word processors have, that emails have, that you may not use are styles. Let's go back into Word for a second. If you look here in Word, if I go to heading 1, on my Home tab, there's different styles here. I can select heading 1 and it'll change it to a blue, it'll update the font. In some places, I might get underlined or other things. If you look here, you've got a number of different styles. Well, that's all we're going to be doing in Unite is we're creating these styles that are unique to our site. So you can do this on your site and have it be consistent. And that's the key thing with the style guide, is that when you see a heading 1, you want it to be the same as every other heading 1 on your site. And because Unite allows you to invite other people to participate, it's hard to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we put it into the software to say, here's your style guide. You set it up at the beginning, everybody uses that. So let's take a look at the defaults. I'm going to go here and click heading 1. And then in the top left-hand side of the edit menu, I click styles. You'll notice that there's a bunch of styles there. There's heading 1. Heading 1 makes it bigger, makes it navy, adds a line underneath it. That's great. It looks like a heading. Heading 2 does a little bit less, makes it bigger, makes it blue, not quite as big, and no line. We'll go down to heading 3. This one indents it a little bit. Well, that's kind of weird. I don't know if I like that. We'll go down to heading 4. Slightly less big, but still just as blue. Heading 5 indents it again. And then, oops, heading 6 adds a little bit more padding afterwards. So you'll see how those are different. Now, I like to test out some of the other appearances here too. If I go and I select these middle lines and make it a bulleted list, that's what a bulleted list looks like. If I go in here and make a numbered list, that's what that looks like. If I go under heading 4, I've got this separate paragraph. I'm going to do what's called a block quote. It looks like this. Changes to italic, makes it a little bigger. If you're quoting someone, that's a great thing to put in there. All right, then I'm going to go down to heading 5 and just indent it and see what that looks like. So we've got a number of different styles that we're working on here. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And then close out. Actually, I should tell you one thing right now, just in case you're playing along. I click Save, but I've got a yellow dot in the top right corner. That means it hasn't been published yet. That means even though I saved the changes, the people who are on the outside looking in can't see them. So if I go out of edit mode, it goes back to what I had originally. Now, don't fear, you haven't lost anything. If I click edit page, it comes right back. If I click this publish button, now it'll be available for everybody to see. And if I go out of here, now that's what's there. This is what the public sees. Now let me go back to my incognito mode. I saw a question in there that says, why do you want to enter, or what do you enter for the incognito page? You hit Control-Shift-N and the letter N, Control-Shift-N on your keyboard if you're using Google Chrome. It might be the same with other browsers, but I don't use them, so I don't know the keyboard shortcuts off the top of my head. But it just allows me to see an untracked site. Now if I go hit refresh, there we go. Now it's going to try to translate my Lorem Ipsum. I don't have to worry about that. But this is what the site looks like. Again, it's nonsense, but it shows me the appearance of the site. And that's what I'm going for. Okay, let's go back to my site and we'll kind of flip back and forth. Again, it's so that I can see what the appearance looks like. I'm going to go to themes, and underneath browse, there is a styles. Now you might remember these styles from what I showed before. These are the same styles that were in the editor. We've got the heading 1 all the way down to heading 6, and we have our normal style. Now the difference between block and inline means blocks are paragraphs and inline styles are words. So you can actually change the word's appearance within a paragraph using inline styles. But if you do a block style, it's everything in that entire paragraph. You'll see that as we get into it with inline styles. But let's start here. If you remember, my logo had a sans serif font. It's, it doesn't have the little things hanging off the ends of it. Well, I used a font called Railway, and I want to use that again. So I'm going to go type in here and click Railway. Before I do that, let me talk about fonts a little bit. And I can go on all day about fonts because there's a lot more complexity than people realize. Fonts are files that are installed on your computer, meaning I have fonts on my computer and you have fonts on your computer, but there's no guarantee they're the same fonts. If I don't have the same font as you, I won't see that font on the computer. And that's true for all users. So there are different fonts that appear in different ways. If you go to a website that uses a font that you don't have, you won't be able to see it in the same way. Well, that's been a problem for a while. And so there's a thing that was created years back called web fonts. And Google, of all people, Google is pretty good on web stuff. Google created a bunch of fonts that are web fonts that are available free of use. So what we've done here is we've put in a list of the most popular Google fonts. Now there are a few fonts that everybody has on their computer, like Arial. If we go into Arial, you can always count on it being seen. And even if it's Arial, if you go to like a Mac, it's Helvetica. They're essentially the same thing. So there's the standard fonts. There's just a handful of those that you are very familiar with, I'm sure. Things like Times New Roman. Well, yeah, we've all seen Times New Roman. We're all kind of sick of Times New Roman. So you have your standard fonts and you have your Google fonts. So we've got a large list there. If there's some that you're looking for, there's ways of adding it to your site that are a little bit more advanced. We're not going to get into that today. Now, the other thing we have here right at the top is what's called inherit. Inherit means take just the default that is used. And so that's what you're going to see right there. Well, let's go here. We're going to go down to Railway. And now I can choose my style. I want to go to an extra bold style. I think that looks good. Now, text decoration says, do you want to underline? Do you want a line strike through? Well, no, those don't usually work so well. We're going to just leave it like that. What color do you want? Well, this is a dark blue, but I really like my orange color. So I'm going to go click on the color and then go in here and type in DA674A. All right. Well, I just saw something on, Katie posted press Command Shift N for incognito on a Mac. Thanks, Katie. Well, there is my nice orange color there. Now I could choose a different background color if I wanted to, but I don't really want to. I'm just going to stick with the white. Now I can choose my margin. Now margin, when you click on it, shows what you're looking at. If I go to margin on the left-hand side, it pushes it out. It's basically doing tabs, but on the left, and you can do spacing on the top and the bottom. I'm going to leave that alone, but you'll see in a little while where that might come into play. Next, I'll go into padding. Now, padding is between the text and the margin. In between that is a border. Now, there's some great images online that'll define that. It takes a little getting used to, but we try to show you what it looks like. You're basically just adding spacing. And so I might want to add a little bit of spacing. There you go. That doesn't look bad at all. In fact, I might cut down on my margin underneath it now that I've done that. We'll do ½ an inch or 0.5 em. That's something I should clarify. Em. EM. That stands for a relative size. You can set that original size at a theme level like we have. So you define essentially how many pixels is 1 em. And then everything else is in relation to that. That allows you on a mobile device to say, well, on a mobile device, 1 em is this many pixels, X number of pixels, a different number. and everything else is still relative to that. So you change that one pivot point based on device. That's what that works out to be. So if you're questioning what M is, it's a relative size. Now we go down here. So that's margin and padding. Now we have border. Now border, you can do a border on the top, the right, the bottom, or the left. You can choose what size it is. This gets into pixels. So I can do a really tall border. I'm just going to do 1. Then you can choose, do you want solid, dotted, dashed, double? Can't really see the double there. There you go. Now you can see it. Now I'm not going to go with double. I'm just going to do 1. And I'm going to go solid. I like that appearance. Actually, let's go dotted. Dotted kind of looks more modern. All right, there we go. That's good for me. I'm going to hit save. It applied it to my site, refreshed my view, and there we have it. I'm not seeing the dashes on there, or the dotted line. Let's go ahead and close this. Oh boy, what happened there? Well, I wasn't expecting that. That looks like I added that background color to the top. Let me go back to themes, go to styles. I think what I did is I set my background color to white when I meant to just leave it as auto. No. Well, that's fun. I'll have to play around with that some more. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing that. All right, well, we're going to be changing it anyways. We're going to go back to the image. I'm going to show you some advanced stuff in just a minute. So that was just a surprise. I wasn't expecting that. We probably could handle that a little bit better. All right, so that's where my line is going. I'm sure it's putting in a background color for me. What I can also do is change my body right there. So you see that we're on a serif. I want to go to a sans serif. I'm going to go up to themes and styles. I keep going back to customize styles. I'm going to go down here to my normal style. And I'm going to choose open sans. I'll start typing in. There's open sans. And for this, I'm going to go to semi-bold. You can see right in here where it says some style text to preview your style. It's going to show it among everything else. And I can make it a little bit bigger just because I want it to show more. And then I'm going to leave it at that color right there. So we'll go ahead and hit save and close out. Oh, we'll wait till it refreshes. There you go. We'll exit out of here. And now you can see that my style has changed there too. Now my headings and everything else are all still the same, but that's something that you can go and change. I'm not going to change it right now because I'm getting closer to my time and I want to show a few more advanced things coming up. But let's go and do a new style. So if I go down here to style, I'm going to create a new block style. I'm going to click add style. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this a call to action, just to show you some cool things we can do with styles. I'm going to make it a block style, meaning it's a whole paragraph. I'm going to keep it as inherit the font family, or actually I'll go ahead and assign it. We'll go to Railway. And I'm going to make this, font style, an extra bold. And the font size, I'm going to bump it up to 1.35 M. I'm not going to do any text decoration. The color, I'm going to go back into that orange color because I like orange. It used to be the color of my room was a bright orange back when I was a kid. Now I'm going to do let's do border first. I'm going to do a border. And I'm going to actually, you can see here, I can expand or collapse. I can do everything. We'll just do 1 and a solid line around all of it. And under here, I'm going to do that same color that I've been using across. So I get this nice style there. Now I'm going to go here to padding and give it some spacing around there. So I'm going to go up to 0.25, 0.25. You can see it's starting to give some more space. Well, let's go up to 0.5. We can go all the way up to 1. We're going to make this a big button-like experience. It won't be a button, but it'll kind of appear like that. And then we're going to go to margin, which is outside the border. And we're going to do the same thing. We'll go up to 1 on all of these. I can also just type it in there. So that's what that looks like. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and save this. So it refreshes my styles. And now I have this nice kind of box or call to action. If I close out of my theme, then I go into edit page. Let's take this last sentence here. We're going to go here, click edit, enter, change that to a call to action. There we go. Styles it like that. We'll hit save, and then I'll close it. Oops, I didn't hit publish. There we go. I'll hit publish, and now that's what it looks like. Now I can add links and everything else. We'll be doing that later on tomorrow as we get into it. Let me scroll down, make sure I'm not missing anything. No, I'm about ready to get into my advanced topic, which won't take too long. But let's go back to my incognito mode, do a quick refresh, see how things look. All right, well, other than updating that heading 1 background, which is kind of goofy, I'm gonna have to fix that. But we're gonna fix that in just a second with an image. But otherwise, things are looking pretty good. So that shows you how you can establish your different styles. Now, if I wanted to highlight a color, we could do another inline style, and let's say I wanted to highlight one specific section. That would be what an inline style is. I'm not going to show that today. That may come up later on, but I think you get the idea. Let's go back and go to my PowerPoint and give you the appropriate warning that this next section is for advanced users only. Again, you can do this, you can follow along. It may not make a lot of sense for you. You don't have to do this. I just want to show you the capabilities of the software. There might be some times where you get into a similar experience that I just got into, where you have something you want to tweak and you can't do it in the UI. In the wide world of web design, there is an infinite number of things you can do, and we can't possibly account for all of them within the tools that we provide. So we give what's kind of an open-ended bucket for all things within Unite. So let's go back to Unite. I'm going to go to my themes, and I'm going to go to, first off, let's go to customize. The problem we ran into before was with the banner, I wanted to have an image in there. And the image didn't have any kind of padding. It was all the way over on the far left. Let's go ahead and save this. We'll see what this looks like. Yeah, not terrible, not great. Let me also, while I'm here, show you another thing we're going to fix. And actually, this will be the first thing to fix. I showed this button. I said we were going to cover the links tomorrow. I meant we're going to cover them today. It was in this advanced section. I'm going to click this link to. I'm going to cover how you do different links tomorrow, but we're going to just do a quick link here. https://www.concordiatechnology.org. We're going to just send people to our website. We'll click add. All right, well, if you notice it, my page is showing up. My link is showing up purple and underlined. Actually, while we're here, let's center it too. Just to make it look a little bit more like a button. We'll publish this. That doesn't look awesome. I want to change that. So under themes and under advanced, this is the fourth one down. You get two options for custom code. If you don't know how to do custom code, don't worry. If you want to know a little bit, I'm going to show you that to you. Custom headers and custom scripts. Basically, this allows you to take code and place it into your theme, either at the top by headers or at the bottom where scripts would go. So I have a little bit of detail here. Not a lot. You don't have to understand everything, but one thing you always have to do is surround it by style tags. If you know code, this will make perfect sense. If you don't, advanced users, pay attention. All right, style. What I want to do is I want to change it so that my links don't have underlines. That's the default style. Well, in CSS, in HTML, links are identified with an A. And so you can change your style by going, your style of links by typing an A and then a specific narrowing of it saying A links. We're going to do a text decoration of none, meaning I don't want any underlines there. So I will go ahead and copy this. We'll go back into Unite and paste this right here. I'm overriding the defaults. So when I click Save Changes, this new code is overriding it and removing the underline. Now, if I wanted to, I could add another color and change it so that purple doesn't show up. If I go back to Themes and Advanced, underneath here, I can do color, and then we'll put in the color that I was wanting. We'll save that. Oh, that's because it's visited. It's purple because it's visited. So if I go back here, I think and I'm not an expert by any means. I think if I type in visited, I think that's what it is. I could be wrong. Now, there's some things where you could break your site. Yeah, there we go. So now it's not purple anymore. There's some things that you can do to break your site in there, and I have done it. Our developers have fixed it for me. So I'll give you a word of caution. Try not to mess anything up too much. If you're fearful about messing things up, that's all right. Well, the next thing I want to do is I want to center my logo, make it bigger, and give it some additional space. Well, using Inspect Elements, which is a browser tool, by clicking right and then Inspect on any element in your page, you get this toolbar over on the right. This allows you to find out the IDs or anything else on your site so that you can modify it. I said at the beginning, we wanted you to be able to edit your site just like updating an email or sending an email. And you can do that. But we also provide you the access all the way down to the code. And I'll get into more of that on Thursday. But you can modify the code using this advanced settings. And I'll show you what we're going to do here. Under heading, under the image, it says the ID is header. So now I know how to call that because I know a little bit about code. I can call that in there. And so I'll show you what I'm going to put in here. We're going to do some headers where we do a text align. We're going to add some padding at the top and the bottom. And then I'll also add in, specifically for the image that's in the header, a max height. And I'm putting in this important to override it. So by the time it's done, my styles are going to look like this. Now, if you're not familiar with code, that doesn't mean too much to you. But for those of you who are, you'll note that I'm just doing a few things in here, and it's going to change my appearance the way that I want it to. So when I click Save, it refreshes. Look at that. My logo is centered. I have some spacing. It's larger. Oh, it looks like I removed my visited before, so it's back to purple. But that's not bad at all. I like that. There are lots of things that we can solve through using the advanced features. Why would you do that rather than just create a new theme? We're going to show how to create a new theme on Thursday. Why don't you start from scratch and create? Well, when you use our themes, it guarantees that we are going to support it, meaning that you get any updates to us. So when we added the social links at the bottom, we were able to do that for all of our themes. But as soon as you create a new theme, as soon as you modify it, beyond the tools of the software, we can't update it without breaking your site or without potentially breaking your site. And so that's why we provided this advanced area here, so that you can go ahead and put in custom code however you'd like. And we'll just put this back in here, a visited, and we'll put our color in. You can add things like this that are just minorly helpful. You know, these are not major changes, but they're things that would really make your site look better. And our team can help with some of this. Often this is the solution you'll get when you call support and say, well, how do I do this? And that's just a great way of doing it, because it makes these minor changes that make a big difference to your site. So again, all we did was add a little bit of code into the advanced section. All right, we covered a lot today. I'm losing my voice already, and I've got another webinar this afternoon, not in this series. So I'm gonna move on and show you some additional training resources. You can, oh, I forgot, we don't have a training manual. I'm using my old theme. We update Unite in a number of different ways, and we haven't been able to maintain a training manual in a good way. So we don't have a printed training manual. We do have training webinars available for you, such as this. We also have our product updates blog where new features are explained, and we have our resource center where you can see the recordings of everything. So we've got a number of training resources for you. But then we also have what I showed you before, a way to reach our software support team, the online help center, the support email address, and the phone number. You'll get people like Jim who's been answering your questions. We've got a whole team like Jim. They're all excellent, and they'll be able to answer any of those questions that you have, or if they can't, they'll talk to our developers and find out the answer. So if you need help, reach out to them. That's what they're there for. It's part of what you pay for as a service. So go ahead and ask your questions to them, but we're going to get into some questions and answers right now. Go ahead and type your questions into the GoToWebinar chat, as many of them have been, or as many of you are. I'm going to review them in just a few minutes. Don't ask about the recording, because I will be sending that. So you don't have to say, please send me the recording. I'm going to no matter what. And then finally, if you are watching this recording, go ahead and send your questions to the support team at the email address or call them at the number on the previous screen. That way you can get your answers even though you're not attending live. I'm going to take a quick breather, grab a drink, and start looking at these questions that I can answer. All right, let's start getting into the ones that Jim wasn't able to get to. There's not that many. Did I miss it? How do I retrieve the handout you mentioned? I mentioned it probably too briefly. The handout is just the text that I put on the screen here. But if you go into your GoToWebinar panel, and I'm sorry, Mike, this is probably a bit too late. It's half an hour ago you asked. But if you go into that GoToWebinar panel, there's a document, and you could easily create this yourself by going to lipsum.com. That's where you can get this helper text. But you can download the Word document that looks like this. Not a lot going on there, but it allowed me to quickly and easily paste and set some styles. All right, next up. Oh, then you saw it, good. All right, man, Jim, you did a fantastic job answering questions. I'll probably answer some of these just live. Michael is asking, once you save changes, can you revert back? Well, it depends on what changes you're asking about, Michael. If you're asking about changes on the text, you can until you publish it. Once you publish it, then it locks those changes in. If you're talking about changes to the theme, the overall appearance, those we don't really have a revert back unless you revert back to one of our current themes or presets. Now, we don't have a lot of different options here. You know, you can pretty easily get back to what you're going for. You know, like here, this heading 1, when, you know, I changed the background color, I'm gonna have to figure out a way to address that. So no, you don't have a lot of good options there, but you can always go and create a new theme where you can save as a different one. Under the customize, these are just options. So we don't have a way to revert back to that, but it's pretty easy to go to what you're looking for. So It depends on where you're talking. For the most part, though, we're writing the code directly to your site so that it'll appear right away. We don't have a whole change log. Now, as we get into more details, I'll show you some other things with that, but at least for the stuff I covered today, that's where we're at. All right, let's go and answer some of these questions that Jim already did for the benefit of the whole group. Daryl's asking, do you have any plans to integrate social media postings into Church360 Unite? Right now I have to use Hootsuite to post social media to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It would be cool to do it within Unite instead. You know, that's a really intriguing idea, something we've talked about, but it's a bit beyond what we're doing right now. We might have some things like that in the future. We've got some really big long-term plans for Church360, but it's not in the immediate future. So again, we've talked about it. It's a great idea. You won't see that anytime soon. Let's see. And to clarify, you're thinking about creating blog posts and then allowing them to trickle automatically into social media. And those are some of the kind of things we talked about as well. So I appreciate it that you are asking that. We're going to put that into feedback too, just to let people know that, or to let our team know that people are interested in that. All right, Christine is saying, is it possible to rearrange picture in the carousel? Christine, you are asking a question that I will cover tomorrow. There's a few steps before that that I can't get into right now for the interest of time, but stay tuned. That's covered in tomorrow's section. And then Mary Fran is saying, is there a place to go for electronic donations such as like PayPal, etc.? That'll be something we cover in detail tomorrow about how to embed code into your site. Depending on what payment processor you're using, there will be different options for embedding that code. So I'm not going to get into all the options today, but we'll talk about that some tomorrow. And let's see, will HEIC photos be accepted for assets? Tom is asking. At this point, we don't have any plans for that. I'm not too familiar with that file type, which I think it's a newer photo format. At this point, we don't have any plans for that, but we'll put that into feedback. And as we hear from others who are interested in that, we can look at doing that. I'll have to look into that a little bit myself. That's some newer technology that I just haven't used. Let's see, can you have two websites, one for church and one for preschool, but they're linked? There's not a way to have two completely different sites under one account. You could purchase two separate Unite accounts. You could use a free account for one if it's basic and use the other for the advanced features. You could set up your navigation to support that, and that's my recommendation. We'll cover that some tomorrow. Today, we're not talking about navigation, but ultimately, this comes down to a strategy. My church communications training that I'm doing right now is probably the best way to learn about that strategy. That's one of the things we touch on. It's not a main focus, but it goes to what are your goals? And if your goal is to have separate identities, well, then have separate sites. If your goal is to really build these up as one unit, well, then I'd put it under one site and change your navigation accordingly. So we'll cover that in a separate course. If you're interested in signing up, I'll go ahead and put that into the chat. So this is, let me go ahead and we'll send this to the entire audience. Church Communications Strategy Training course every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Central Time. I've done 2 sessions so far. There's 5 more to go. Excuse me. I get so excited talking about this, I get choked up. This is where we'll talk about some of those things about how do you want to use it. That'll dictate how you implement it. Pardon me, just a second. That'll dictate, where you want it to go. And then I'll show you in the navigation tomorrow, where do you want to put that on your site? So I can't answer your question specifically, Christine, but I encourage you to think through why. And then as we go into it tomorrow, you'll kind of see the how. All right. Second question from Daryl. I'm using MailChimp to reach the congregation. It suddenly dawned on me that I need to convert to use our built-in users tool for this purpose, correct? Well, it depends on how you want to do it. You can absolutely do it. We'll show that on Wednesday, what the tool looks like. It does not have all the bells and whistles of MailChimp. It is meant for quick communication that is better than just sending a mass email. I'll show you what that looks like on Wednesday. If you're pleased with MailChimp, I don't necessarily encourage you to convert away from that. But once you know how both tools function, that's your call. All right, next up. Let's see, let me keep scrolling down. Daryl's been going back and forth with Jim on that specifically. I'm not going to get into that too much. Mary Fran's asking, can pictures or videos be inserted into this home page? Yes, we'll cover that tomorrow. I think we're just about there. Yeah, there's some stuff. Michael's asked a question. As an admin, when I log in, I see all of the site and options. When I'm not logged in, I see what a non-site user sees. Is there a mode to see what a site user, but not an admin, would see without creating a dummy login? Michael, there is not, but I'll kind of talk through that as we get into users on Wednesday. You have a pretty good idea of what users will see based on understanding the roles, because it's not going to change so much that it's kind of a mystery. Like, it'll look like this for one person, but it'll look something else like for someone else. It's going to be either they can see it or they can't. It'll either be in the menu or it won't. So once I cover how those roles work, then I think you'll have a good idea of what it's like. We've thought about saying, well, show it to me like this. Well, it's not so granular that you can't really just figure out, well, they can't see that specific page or they can't see that specific tab. So I hope that helps maybe calm any nerves you have about what people are seeing and what they aren't seeing. I go with the incognito mode because that gives me what the public sees. And that's really that main line that I want to understand is, am I putting anything out there that the public shouldn't be seeing? I also use it just as a quick preview. So there's both of those purposes. But from a security standpoint, from my permission standpoint, it's a really good thing to see what the public sees. All right, well, we are right after 11:30. And Mary Fran saying, I thought this webinar continued on Mondays, not daily. No, the way that we've set this up, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up so I can talk about it. If you go to our website and go to training, you will need to sign up for each of the three others. The topics are so different that I made these different webinars rather than a series because we won't have everybody signing up for all of them. But if you want to sign up for them, the next 3 days from 10 to 11:30. Now, I'm broadcasting these live, but I'm recording them and sharing them so that you have this resource until we do these webinars again. So if you can't attend live, you can't attend live. But now that you've registered for one, I will be sending you the emails with the links to all of them, just so you have them. So it's only these 4 days this week, but the recordings will be up there indefinitely until there's better recordings out there. All right, well, that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Special thanks to Jim for doing an excellent job with the questions. I really appreciate you being here. It just makes life so much easier for me. Thank you again to everybody who attended. I hope you found this valuable. I'm excited to show you more tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow at 10 o'clock Central Time. Go sign up for that as soon as possible. Thanks so much. Have a great day.